probably satanic family, and that were very happy to do a favor for this man. And then I was, after that, was taken to Germany, and I was there for another month in a facility in Heidelberg for what was my mind control training. And this is 1972 when I was 9 years old.
Mind control training at 9 years old?
Yeah.
Why did they take you there?
When I met this billionaire, so in 1972 we had the Bilderberg meeting that happened in Belgium. So for that event, Paul van Boenans made sure that he probably did many things around there, but basically to please this powerful American that was there for the Bilderberg meeting, he staged a ritual.
And so why would they need to train you, though?
The mind control training, he had plans for me. And, all right, I can say something. He had me in his homes and everything to get me used to the life of the elites, so that I would know how to eat, so that I would recognize good clothes, so that I would be comfortable in these environments. And alongside that, we went to on one of the islands on the northeastern coast of the United States and saw there, and this was a Rothschild who was there.
Rothschild?
A Rothschild, yeah.
And is this who you're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm saying we were with Evelyn the Rothschild for one day only. And it was clear that this billionaire, who you would think is just as powerful as this Rothschild, was not as powerful in the network as he was. And he was asking for permission to make the star that he wanted to make of me. Well, he didn't want to make me into a star. He wanted to make me into an elite sex slave where I would become famous in France. And then with that role, I would attract the most powerful men in the world, and I would be able to spy on them for him and so forth.
Is that David Rockefeller?
I'm not saying. I can't say this. All right.
Only reason I say that is because I pulled up a list from 2012 attendees, and I went through all the guests on the right that says U.S. from the Bilderberg meeting.
Okay.
Rob, if you go a little bit lower and zoom in and you put U.S., yeah, right there, you'll see the names that shows. I know this is...
Just give me a minute. Well, I can't lie, but it's scary. Yeah, might as well. Okay, there you go.
You've never talked about this.
I've never said his name.
You know, you hear these stories, and you wonder, you know, there's no way these people are capable of doing something like that. At what point did you know it was him?
When he died.
2017.
Yeah.
So you didn't know until 2017.
But I knew a lot, but I didn't know that it was him.
So how did you know it was him when he died in 2017? Because that was just 7 years ago.
Immediately. I knew immediately. I just saw his face. And first of all, I saw his face, and then immediately a lot of other memories came back with him.
How much time did you spend with him?
Well, I spent quite a lot of time with him in the beginning. So from 72 to 73, this was this training. So I spent quite a lot of time with him in the U.S. in that first month, in July of 1972, and spent time in his estate in Westchester, and also in his home in New York City, and also in his home in Maine. And on the way to Maine, on his sailboat, we stopped off at Rothschild, who had to give his permission for the persona that he wanted to make out of me. And then Rothschilds invited me into the family, and I gave my, I certainly, I had not been treated very well up until then, so suddenly I get a very nice invitation. I feel, even this training, even though there was a lot of sex training also, just let's not make any mistakes there. This is not like I was just suddenly being treated really well. I was being trained sexually as well. But it was the best I'd ever seen in my life at age 9. And when I was invited, I
You mean treatment of elites like lifestyle, wealth? Is that what you mean by treatment?
no, in the first 3 years in the network by Paul van den Boeynant, I was treated like absolute piece of dirt.
What does that mean?
I was the lowest of the low. He always treated me like, he wasn't worth the time for him to even sort of have I don't know, a chewing gum on his soul or something, and he just had to pull it off and just resented having to spend any time on me. But he was selling me all over, or whatever he was doing. He was using me for blackmail for people that were supposedly new, or he was giving me to depraved aristocrats. But he didn't want to, I was treated, most of the time I was treated like I was absolute piece of dirt, like I had no value at all.
Did he himself sexually abuse you or no, Paul?
He beat me up.
But not sexually
I
abuse
did
you?
not get sexually abused by him. He was extremely sadistic. So he did not sexually abuse me. He abused other children, though. And I don't remember being sexually abused by him. But he and a few others that were in charge there just really would treat me like the lowest of the low. So I was used to sort of knowing that it was them, it was their fault. I knew that they treated me that way, but I know that I'm human. So I didn't really fully take it seriously, and I was kind of playing the game to survive, playing this game of whatever they needed me to do. I was doing it. And then in 1972, suddenly 3 years later, I got, treated as very special. And this treatment had a lot to do with the excitement that David Rockefeller felt over the fact that he loved being behind the scenes creating this slave, this elite sex slave, who was going to make him millions. And I was already sold in the first year. In that year, till I, I gave my will to the Rothschild. And he asked specifically, he asked, will you be part of the family? And I said yes. And he asked me to say, I will give my will. And a year later, I did not give my will anymore. And that's why I'm here. But I got,
Why would Rockefeller do that if he's got billions at the time? That's a very powerful family.
He was a pedophile, first of all, and these families.
Rothschild and David, or more David?
The Rothschild, I don't think, was a pedophile.
But David.
He was more powerful, but he was not a pedophile. David Rockefeller was a pedophile. There's a lot of survivors. I work with survivors. There are a lot of survivors out there of David Rockefeller. But I saw him in a certain light, and I've met one other person. All right, now that we're named a lot of survivors out there, Rockefeller was a pedophile. I don't think was a pedophile.
But David.
He was more powerful, but he was not a pedophile. David Rockefeller was a pedophile. There's a lot of survivors. I work with survivors. There are a lot of survivors out there of David Rockefeller. But I saw him in a certain light, and I've met one other person. All right, now that we're named David Rockefeller, I can tell you that the place where I was taken in Germany, in Heidelberg, the doctor that was in charge there, Hans Harmsen, I have met another survivor that was also a special project of David Rockefeller, and Hans Harmsen, who was the doctor in charge there, she was there too as a special project of him, and she also came across Hans Harmsen.
Harmsen?
Hans Harmsen.
Harmsen.
S-E-N. Yes. There you go. There you go.
And who was he?
He was, I think, that he was in charge of the special project of David Rockefeller for the mind control training. And I know one other survivor who went through similar experiences as myself later on.
Did you ever meet him?
Meet him? Oh, yeah.
What was he like?
Or horrendous.
Unpack it.
Okay. The way that you're trained in mind control training, it's based on torture. What I was used to doing as a child sex slave was to please men in some way or other, to get on their wavelength so that they wouldn't harm me, so that I could survive. With him, I never got anywhere. I never got through it at all. Most of these pedophiles you could get through in some way. There's some way in which, I could sense intuitively what I needed to do to please them. So with him, there was nothing that I could do to get through to him. It was just completely mean and vicious. And one thing that he would do is I was forced to watch certain things to learn about men's behavior, whether it was their weakness or their sexual preferences or their sexual perversions, their sexual perversions. So we're not talking about regular sexual. We're talking about sexual perversions, to recognize those. And so I was forced to watch films. And first I would see the man in the behavior, just his face, and then seeing it in the behavior, different things. And then I would need to guess based on a face what this person would do. And if I got it wrong, one thing that he did is he would just strangle me until I fainted. And in the fainting...
He would?
Yeah, he would, yeah. And in the fainting, he liked to strangle. And in the fainting, I would realize after a while that in these near-death experiences that my intuition was sharpening. And so it was punishment for not giving the right answer, but it was also part of the training to be able to get more intuitive and sense things without having to use your reason. And one thing he did was he would strangle me, but first he would say, "Was bedeutet das?" What does this mean? And he would point at his own face, and then he would strangle me. And so his face to me means being strangled, or it did. That's how the programmation worked. So when I actually came across his photo, I felt like I was dying. And it took a long time. And I do a lot of yoga and meditation, and I had to really just go into the breathing and really, really just work through that programmation that seeing his face means you're going to die from strangulation. You're going to asphyxiate.
He wanted you to know that.
That is how programmation works in the network. That you know it, and your body has a reaction. And also, it is a way to get you from A to whatever they need you to go. So if this prompt means that, and that was in Heidelberg, he wasn't there all the time. Most of the time there were 3 handlers that were doing this.
So if you go back to that, Rob, that says right there, he was a bureaucrat in the Nazi Germany. He was responsible for approving eugenic sterilization performed on the disabled. He supported forced sterilization of the mentally handicapped and helped to carry them out to Protestant intermission institutions for which he was responsible.
David Rockefeller also was a eugenicist.
So when you're with David Rockefeller, are you in their estate? Are you in their house? Are you around their family? And if you are, who
Not
is?
around their family, no. But I was around. I was in 3 of his estates, as I said, and I was around his staff.
Did their staff know what was going on with you or no?
I was in bed with him, and they acted like nothing was happening.
You were in bed with them.
And the staff knew and was there, and they were just acting like that was all normal. I went shopping on Madison Avenue with him. He bought me some dresses and some clothes. And everybody, you can imagine, everybody's so happy to see him, so happy to serve him.
You don't think they're going to think it's weird that a young girl is with a very powerful billionaire?
I don't think today people would think that was weird because there's such a great desire to please those people. But this is 1972. Nobody thought anything. I could have been taken anywhere out in the open. A lot of it was out in the open, and nobody would have thought a single thing. These people were just so happy to serve him. He told his staff that I was his niece from Paris. Who cares?
While they're seeing you in bed with them.
Well, he didn't say it then, but they did see it. But they acted like nothing was happening. I don't know if they were also controlled or if they were the right kind of personality. I don't know. But I saw a woman and a butler, a woman and a man. Only those two, and that was in the house in New York.
How did they treat you?
Very nice.
They were good to you.
Very.
How was he to you?
Well, most of the time he had this excitement. So a pedophile gets excited around children. And so there's a way in which they can start to feel alive when they're with children. Because it's their own little child that maybe is dead inside of them that's just sort of starting to come to life. And because they relate to children in that way. They see they're trying to revive their own deadness, which dead from abuse or whatever it is. You know, they're trying to revive something. So they're seeing children at a certain age, usually the age that they were abused. And he was excited. And he was excited not only of being around me, and of course a child is also not somebody who's going to point out your flaws, yeah, right? A real partner will point your flaws to your flaws. And he had a slave who was already a child slave, who was, you know, thinking the world of him, and that made him feel really good. So he was excited, and he was also excited at the idea of what he was making me into, because this persona that he was creating, that I was supposed to be a French singer, actress, and he was excited to be the secret man owner behind that persona. And I was sold during that year already, when I was still supposedly in training to become that persona. I was already probably sold. I mean, I was given to a German chancellor at the time, and that was Kurt Kiesinger, who I was driven to Germany. So the Belgians were the Belgian handlers would drive me to Germany, and then I would spend time with Kurt Kiesinger, you know, who would take me to like little hotels, and again, no questions asked. Yeah. Yeah.
Before you became chancellor, you served as a minister president of 1958-66, president of Federal Council 1960. He was a chairman of Christian Democratic Union from 67 to 71. And David introduced you to him? How did
Nobody
you meet
introduced me. I was just taken there.
You were just taken there.
Child sex slave is not introduced. You know, it doesn't happen that way. But the Belgian handlers would take me. They would drop me off on the side of the road. And then he would pick me up, and then I would get in a car with him. And then he would drive me, and then we would arrive. And again, I was trained, so I knew how not to draw attention to myself. But also, he taught me to speak German. He was very enamored and he might have been paying.
So I'm looking at this, when we're looking at some research, common methods used by traffickers, false promises, offering employment, education, or romantic relationships. 2, isolation,
This is different.
separating victims from family and friends to increase dependency.
Different.
3, threats and violence, using physical harm or threats against the victim or their loved ones.
For sure.
4, debt bondage, creating a sense of indebtedness that the victim feels obligated to repay. Psychological manipulation, employing tactics like gaslighting to control the victim's perception of reality.
Yes, but you see, when you're talking about the network, which I again, you have David Rockefeller, you have the Rothschilds, you have the Belgians who are, connecting to that network. We're talking about a global network of people, of a combination of psychopaths and pedophile and, far gone pedophiles that are Satanists. And they sell their soul to Satan. And they want control. They have the resources. A lot of the children that are born into these families are abused from the beginning and are mind controlled as well. They are also tortured. Because what they do, other than the sort of like normal kind of trafficking, is that you get in, and either you are what I was in the beginning, like your life means nothing and you could be killed anytime. That was the first 3 years. But then once he took notice of me, and which was in a very strange circumstance, but he is David Rockefeller. Once he took notice of me, and he was going to then use me for his purposes, then I would have been part of what I call the global network, where I would have been completely controlled as a star. That's where the mind control comes in, and then using my natural talents and abilities and blood to create a person that is completely in their control, while they have been created the same way. And all these people are crazy. That is, see, this is everything goes into the PR of presenting an image that is really acceptable, and then everything goes into the PR of, it's not as if David Rockefeller didn't have access to the press. So what these people were part of this murderous network, they use their resources to control their image, and that is, of course, that someone like me should never have too much reach. And what we don't understand is that it is one network, and of course if they're friends, they're connected a lot through blackmail, because the Satanists, there's what I call sincere Satanists, who really sell their soul to Satan, and they have rituals, and there are sacrifices being made. And then there are those that just want to belong to the club of power. And, and then it depends. In the network in Belgium, well, it depends if someone gets sucked in. You have your integrity and you have your ideals, and you start out, and then what happens? If you get into that club, you will be asked to make choices. And either it's power and you stay with the club, or it's your integrity means that you cannot do this anymore. You cannot lie. In the beginning, it's to just be quiet about what you see, having to do with sexual abuse usually, and then as it goes on, it becomes you get involved. You're participating, and of course, it's not everybody that is going to be manipulable as a pedophile, because not everybody is going to rape a child. But those who don't, they know, and they keep quiet about it. So that's how it works. And
how long were you with David Rockefeller? 1 month? Or did you see him again after that?
I did see him again after that. I saw him again after the training, and I saw him again, especially a year later in April. I saw him
73 or 70, 72?
73 now.
Okay.
April of 73. I saw him in Italy, and that's where I saw the most people that I recognized later. There were actually a lot of singers there. There were a lot of people that were in the entertainment industry, and this was my coming out. I was singing. I performed several songs. So there was some Jacques Brel songs because he's Belgian,
Jacques
like
Brel
myself.
song, really, like Ne me quitte
Ne me
pas,
quitte pas.
yeah,
That's what I sang. Yeah, Ne me quitte pas. And then
Nous sommes oubliés too. It's a beautiful, amazing song.
It's a beautiful
he's one of
song.
my favorite. And by the way, that song was sang by, I think Julio Iglesias. I think Sting. They converted it in English. The meaning of the song is actually very interesting. The first time he sang that song on TV, he died at a very young age.
He died rather young, yeah,
yeah.
but he was alive then, and it was a popular song.
Was
and
he there at the event or no?
No, no. I never saw Jacques Brel, but I was singing the song, and what I had been trained by a famous French composer, singer, and he had showed me the choreography. Now, I didn't fully understand what was happening, but this choreography, I was sexualizing every line of that song. So you have the line, for example, I remember Le Vieux Volcan. There's a line about the old volcano that nevertheless still spouts fire. And for that, I remember I had to go sit on an old man's lap and I had to look down on his genitals. Because that's the old volcano that spouts fire, that still spouts fire.
In front of everybody?
That was the audience, yeah. And this is an audience of people that were in the sphere of Rockefeller, obviously, but this is like a satanic gathering. I mean, these were people that were in this club, and for whatever reason they wanted to be there, whether it was for fame or whatever,
When you're doing that, are they laughing or are they just like, oh, it's this great performance? What's
laughing?
the reaction?
No, laughing.
They're
Everybody
laughing.
laughs at the sex jokes of the 9-year-old. Absolutely.
You're 9 years old at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And who's there? Some of the names that you're saying. Who's there at this
Well,
party?
I know you really want to hear names, and I really don't like to focus so much on the names, but Eddie Arnold was an American perpetrator that was there. And Eddie Arnold was, yeah. So Eddie Arnold was somebody who really, really, really wanted to belong to the club. And I don't know how people got in there. Some of them are coming in through masonry. Some of them are coming in other ways because they get famous and then they get lured in. But he just really wanted to belong.
Now, when you say belong to the club, meaning just to be there.
Power.
Was he?
It's power.
But not abusing kids. You're not.
No, he abused me. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he abused. That week, so there was an entire week, and I was basically given to a lot of men there. And meanwhile, horrible things were happening.
Songs.
Yeah. Meanwhile, lots of horrible things were happening. There was rituals happening. It was like the only thing I can compare it to is maybe like I think of a Dionysian orgy. Have you ever read the books of Mary Renaud? Mary Renaud? Okay. She has described once, and I don't even remember which book, but she described a Dionysian orgy, and it was like I was back there. It goes on for days and days, and...
See, if I look online, there's literally nothing online about accusations about Eddie Arnold.
Can you say? You're not going to probably... I know a lot of survivors of David Rockefeller, but I don't think you're going to find any accusation online about David Rockefeller. It's all about cover-up. It is very, very good. All the investment, all the money goes, I mean, not all the money, but it goes a lot to the image.
You gave a couple other names to me earlier. I don't want to say it until you're comfortable. One of the names was another famous politician from the West.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
He was also there that week.
He was also there that week.
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau.
And what was the interaction with you?
Scary.
Was his wife also involved or just him?
I didn't see his wife, or I don't know. I didn't see anybody else but him.
But you vividly remember him. And when did you know it was him?